The call came in at 11:14 on a Tuesday morning, while I was 40 floors above downtown Chicago, auditing the receivables of a company that had been quietly cooking its books for 3 years. I was good at finding things people tried to hide. I just never thought I would have to use that skill on my own family. My phone buzzed against the glass conference table. Unknown number, Illinois area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then something made me pick up. "Is this Rachel Hendricks?" A man's voice. Flat, professional. Speaking. "Miss Hendricks, this is Daniel Osei from First Midwest Title and Escrow. I'm calling to confirm your wire instructions for the refinance closing on your property at 4412 North Paulina Street. We have the closing scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m., and we just need to verify the receiving account." The blood drained from my face so fast, I felt lightheaded. I gripped the edge of the conference table and stood up, turning toward the window so the clients across the table couldn't see my expression. "I'm sorry," I said, keeping my voice barely above a whisper. "Could you repeat the address?" He did. It was my condo, my name on the deed, the unit I had spent 6 years saving for, bought at 26 with every dollar I had scraped together, working double shifts through grad school. "Mr. Osei," I said carefully. "I did not schedule a refinance closing." A pause. Then, "Miss Hendricks, we have a signed application, a signed loan agreement, and a notarized closing disclosure, all bearing your name and your social security number. The loan amount is $240,000. I excused myself from the conference room, walked to the stairwell, and sat down on the cold concrete steps of the 38th floor landing. Then, I called my mother. She picked up on the first ring. "Rachel, honey, I was just about to call you." She was not just about to call me. She had not called me first in 4 months. "Mom." I kept my voice steady, the way I kept my voice steady when I sat across from CFOs who had stolen from their own pension funds. "There is a title company calling me about a refinance on my condo. A closing tomorrow. A $240,000 loan with my signature on it. Would you like to tell me what that is?" Silence. Not the silence of shock, the silence of someone recalibrating. "Alice," she started. She called me by my dead grandmother's name when she wanted sympathy. She had done it my whole life. "Rachel," I corrected. "Rachel. Baby, your brother is in trouble, real trouble. We were going to tell you tonight. We were going to sit down as a family. What did you do? We didn't have a choice." Her voice shifted into the tone I knew from every Thanksgiving argument and every birthday where the gift-giving somehow turned into a conversation about what I owed the people who raised me. "Derek has been dealing with this situation for months, and we have been carrying it alone, your father and I. And there is only so much 2 retired people on a fixed income can do, Rachel. You have that condo sitting there. You have equity. You are doing well. Derek is drowning. You forged my signature," I said. "We used the information we had. That is called identity fraud, Mom. That is a federal crime. Don't be dramatic." And there it was. The same 2 words she had used when I cried after she gave Derek my college fund at 17 and told me scholarships existed for a reason. "We are your family. We did what families do. Derek needed the equity, and you were never going to just give it to us, so we handled it. The money goes to clear his debt, and then everything goes back to normal." "Back to normal," I repeated. "The closing is tomorrow. By Thursday, it is done. You pay the new mortgage payment instead of your old one. It is maybe $300 more a month. You can afford that, Rachel. You make good money." I want you to understand who my mother was. Sandra Hendricks was a woman who had been beautiful and charming once, who had married a man who worked hard and paid the bills, and mostly stayed out of her way, who had raised 2 children with a scoreboard she never put away. I was the one who checked boxes. Straight A's, full scholarship, good job, responsible. Derek was the one who needed rescuing. Not because he was less capable, because she had never once let him face a consequence in his life. Derek was 32. He had opened a craft cocktail bar 3 years ago with $50,000 our parents borrowed against their own car titles and pressed into his hands at Christmas with a bow on the envelope. The bar had lasted 14 months. Before it closed, Derek had taken on a silent partner, A man named Marcus Webb, who went by the name Websy in certain circles, and whose investment came with terms that were never written on paper. I knew some of this. I had heard pieces at family dinners, between my mother's deflections and my father's sighs. I did not know the number. $240,000. I had not known it had gotten that large. I hung up on my mother mid-sentence and sat in that stairwell for exactly 4 minutes. I know because I watched the seconds tick on my phone. Then I opened my contacts and called the only attorney whose number I had memorized. Patrice Donovan had been my client 2 years ago when I helped her firm untangle an embezzlement case. She was a litigator who wore reading glasses on a chain and spoke in complete, precise sentences that felt like legal filings made audible. When I told her what had happened in under 90 seconds, she did not gasp or offer condolences. She said, "Do you have any existing loan documents on the property?" "Yes, original mortgage, paid down to $60,000, clean title." "Good. I'm going to call the title company right now and place them on notice of contested identity." That triggers a mandatory hold. No ethical title company closes over a fraud flag, and if this one tries to, they lose their license. "What is the company name?" I told her. I heard typing. "I also need you to pull your credit report the moment we hang up. Look for any other accounts opened in your name in the last 12 months. If they did this once, they may have done it before." "Already pulling it up," I said, because I was. I was sitting on a concrete staircase in a skyscraper with 3 browser tabs open on my phone. Old habit. When I find rot, I find all of it. The credit report loaded. There were 2 accounts I did not recognize. A credit card opened 8 months ago with a $12,000 limit, carrying a $9,000 balance. And a personal loan from an online lender, $35,000, opened 5 months ago, already in collections. My mother had not done this once. She had been doing it for almost a year. I called Patrice back before she had finished dialing the title company. "There are 3 fraudulent accounts," I said. "Total exposure is approximately $286,000. Another pause. Then, with something close to gentleness, "Rachel, go back to your meeting. Let me make the calls. Come to my office at 5. I went back to my meeting. I finished the audit. I presented my findings to 3 men in expensive suits who had stolen a combined $4 million from their investors over 6 years. I spoke calmly. I cited chapter and verse. I answered their attorneys' questions without raising my voice. I was very good at this part. At 5, I sat across from Patrice in her office on Michigan Avenue while she laid out what she had done. The title company had frozen the closing pending investigation. My credit card company and the online lender had been notified of potential identity fraud and had placed holds on collection activity. Patrice had also pulled the original loan application. She slid a copy across the desk. My mother's handwriting. I recognized the way she formed her 7s. My name, my social, my employment information, all accurate. My signature, which looked like mine but wasn't, done by someone who had practiced. The notary seal at the bottom was from a woman named Cynthia Park, licensed in Cook County. "She used a notary who knew her," Patrice said. "This woman has been your mother's notary for real estate transactions for 11 years. She notarized your mother's home sale in 2019. She knew your mother's signature, but she had never met you. My guess is your mother told her you had authorized her to sign on your behalf, and she took her at her word, which is still fraud," I said. "Which is still fraud. The notary is exposed, which means the notary has every incentive to cooperate with investigators and tell them exactly who presented the documents and what they were told." I looked at the loan application again. In the space for borrower occupation, it said forensic accountant, my actual job title. My mother had filled in my actual job title on the fraudulent application for the loan she had taken out in my name. She had known exactly what she was doing. She knew I would find it eventually. She just assumed that by the time I did, the money would be gone and the closing would be complete, and I would be left with the choice between burning my own family to the ground or quietly absorbing a higher mortgage payment and pretending it had never happened. She was betting I would choose silence. She had been betting on that my entire life. I took the elevator down and stood on Michigan Avenue in the October cold, and I called Derek. He picked up on the 3rd ring. His voice had that specific quality it always had when he knew he had done something, the careful lightness of someone walking across a frozen pond, testing each step. "Hey, Rach, tell me about Marcus Webb," I said. A long breath. "Mom told you." "Mom told me nothing useful. I found the rest myself." "How much do you owe him?" "It's complicated." "Derek." "How much?" "The original investment was $80,000. With the terms he set, the interest has compounded. He says I owe him $240 now. $240,000. The exact amount of the refinance loan. Did you go to Mom and Dad and ask them to fix this?" "I didn't ask them to do what they did." His voice cracked slightly. "I told them I was scared. I told them Websy was sending people to the restaurant, to the old location, looking for me. Dad said he had a plan. I didn't know about the condo until last week. And you didn't call me." Silence. "You knew last week," I said. "You knew they had taken out a loan in my name, and you did not call me. Mom said you would be angry. She said you would make it worse. She said if we could just get through the closing." I hung up. I did not go home that night. I went to my office, made coffee, and started working. I was a forensic accountant. This was what I did. I found paper trails, and I followed them until they led somewhere that mattered. I pulled Marcus Webb's business entity from the Illinois Secretary of State database, Webb Capital Ventures LLC, registered 4 years ago. Registered agent address in Cicero. I cross-referenced the address with property records. Then I pulled his litigation history. 3 civil suits in Cook County in 5 years, all of them debt collection actions against former business partners. 2 had settled. 1 was still pending. I looked at the pending case. The plaintiff's attorney was a name I recognized. He was known for representing clients whose businesses existed in the space between legal and not. Then I found something interesting. Webb Capital Ventures had filed a UCC lien against Derek's bar 18 months ago. A UCC lien was a public record. It meant Webb had legally perfected his interest in the bar's assets when Derek defaulted. He already had legal recourse. He did not need to threaten my brother's physical safety to collect. He had the lien. But instead of enforcing the lien through the court system, he had chosen to send people to the former restaurant location and make my brother afraid enough to let our mother commit federal fraud on his behalf. That told me something. It told me Marcus Webb did not want this in front of a judge. I kept digging. By midnight, I had found 3 other LLCs with similar patterns. A restaurant group in Wicker Park, a food truck operation in Logan Square, a catering company in Bridgeport. All of them had taken on a silent partner from one of Webb's entities. All of them had defaulted. None of them had gone through formal court proceedings to resolve the debt. All of them had quietly disappeared. I printed everything and put it in a folder. Then I drove home and slept 4 hours and got up and put on the suit I wore when I testified in federal court. My parents' house was in Elmhurst. I pulled up at 8 in the morning on a Wednesday. My father's car was in the driveway. My mother's was gone. She had a Wednesday morning Bible study group that she had attended for 20 years without missing a session because appearances required consistency. My father opened the door before I knocked. He looked like a man who had not slept well and was prepared for it not to get better. Rachel. He stepped back to let me in. My father, Gerald Hendricks, was a man I had spent most of my life trying to understand. He was not cruel. He was not malicious. He was passive in a way that had always felt, to me, like a choice dressed up as a personality trait. He let things happen. He let my mother redirect college funds and co-sign bad loans and absorb Derek's disasters year after year, and he stood in the background looking tired, and that was the whole of his participation. I sat down at the kitchen table where I had eaten 10,000 meals, and I opened the folder. "I need you to look at this," I said. He sat across from me. I walked him through it. The loan application, the fraudulent credit card, the online loan in collections, the total exposure. I did not raise my voice. I showed him the documents the way I showed documents to attorneys and investigators, methodically, completely, with everything sourced and cited. He did not interrupt. He looked at each page with the careful attention of a man hoping to find a mistake in the numbers that would make them smaller. There was no mistake. "Your mother," he started. I know who did it, I said. I need to know if you knew. He was quiet for a long moment. I knew about the condo. I did not know about the other accounts. Did you tell her to stop? He looked at the table. I told her it was a bad idea, and then you let her do it anyway. He did not answer. Which was itself an answer. Dad. I waited until he looked at me. I have an attorney. The closing is frozen. The title company has been notified of fraud. Patrice is filing a complaint with the state's attorney's office today, unless I tell her not to. I have not told her not to. His face went gray. Rachel, your mother could. I know what could happen. I have known since yesterday morning what could happen. I have been the one sitting with that knowledge for 24 hours while Mom went to Bible study, and Derek hid and you did not call me. I folded my hands on the table. Here is what I want from this conversation. I want to know everything about Marcus Webb. What Derek told you, what promises were made, what the real number is. Because I do not think the real number is $240,000. I think that number was manufactured. My father blinked. What do you mean? I mean, I have been looking at Webb's business history since midnight. He does this. He invests in small food and beverage businesses with informal terms. He lets the debt compound using interest rates that would be criminal if they were written down anywhere. And then he collects in ways that do not go through the court system because he cannot afford for a judge to look at his loan terms. He already has a UCC lien on Derek's bar. He could have collected through the courts a year ago. He chose intimidation instead because the intimidation gets him more. My father stared at me. The 240 number, I said. Who calculated it? Webb sent a letter. Derek brought it to us. Did Derek's attorney review it? Another long pause. Derek doesn't have an attorney. Of course he didn't. I need the letter, I said. My father got up and went to the desk in the corner of the kitchen, where he kept important papers in manila folders organized by category, a habit I had apparently inherited. He came back with an envelope and slid it across to me. The letter was on Webb Capital Ventures letterhead. It listed the original principal, $80,000. Then it listed interest accrued at a monthly rate that, when I annualized it, came out to 68%. That rate was not just unreasonable. Under Illinois law, it was criminally usurious for a consumer loan. For a business loan, the regulations were different, but the terms had never been reduced to a written agreement at all, which meant Webb was trying to collect on a verbal contract with an interest rate he had invented himself after the fact. He was not just a predatory lender. He was a fraud. I pulled out my phone and called Patrice. I need to add something to what we discussed yesterday, I said when she answered. I explained the Webb situation, the usurious rate, the lack of written loan agreement, the UCC lien he had already filed, the pattern of similar businesses. Patrice was quiet for a moment. Then she said, if there is no written loan agreement with stated terms, he cannot legally enforce any specific interest rate. The UCC lien covers the original principal plus reasonable interest, reasonable being defined by the courts, not by Webb. His actual legal claim against your brother is likely a fraction of what he told him he owed. That is what I thought, I said. Rachel, I want to be clear about something. What your mother did is still fraud. The accounts opened in your name are still fraud. Those two things are not connected. We are still filing the complaint. I know, I said. Do you want me to proceed? I looked at my father across the table. He had the expression of a man watching a structure he had let decay for decades finally come down. Yes, I said. Proceed. My mother came home at 10:15. I heard her key in the lock, and then her footsteps in the entryway, and then the precise moment she registered that my car was in the driveway and recalibrated her entrance. She came into the kitchen with her church bag on her shoulder, and her reading glasses pushed up on her head and her smile already arranged. Rachel, I didn't know you were coming. Sit down, Mom. She looked at my father. He looked at the table. She sat down. I had thought about how to do this. I had considered being cold, the flat clinical voice I used in depositions. I had considered being loud, which I had almost never been with her, because loud had never worked, and she had always used it as evidence that I was unreasonable. I had decided to be neither. I was just going to be complete. I opened the folder again, and I laid out every document on the table. The loan application, the credit card, The online loan, the letter from Webb, the UCC lien filing. Patrice's notice to the title company. The complaint Patrice was filing that morning. My mother looked at each one. Her expression did not change much. She was a woman who had managed her face for 71 years, and she was not going to stop now. "You are going to ruin this family," she said, "over a piece of real estate." "You used my social security number," I said. "You signed my name. You convinced a notary who trusted you to certify a signature that wasn't mine. You did this to fund a loan that was fraudulent on both ends, because the man collecting the debt inflated it illegally. Derek needed help. Derek needed help 8 years ago, when you gave him the restaurant fund and told him the rules didn't apply to him. What Derek needed was to learn that there are consequences. What he got instead was you dismantling my financial life to postpone his. You have plenty," she said, and her voice carried that edge I had heard 1,000 times, the one that meant I was being selfish for existing in a way that had resources she could redirect. "You have a good job. You have savings. You will be fine." Derek is not fine. Derek has men coming to his apartment. Derek has men coming to his apartment because you never once let him sit in a problem long enough to solve it himself, I said. And those men are coming to collect a debt that is legally unenforceable, as stated, because the lender fabricated the interest rate and has no written contract to support it. She blinked. "The real amount Derek owes," I said, "based on the original principal and a legally defensible interest calculation, is somewhere between $90,000 and $110,000, not $240. Webb told Derek it was $240 because Derek was scared and didn't have an attorney and didn't know any better. You were so panicked, you didn't check." My mother looked at my father. "Gerald, did you know this?" "Rachel told me this morning," he said quietly. "So all of this," she gestured at the documents, "the complaint, the fraud notice, all of this, over a number that isn't even real. Over a number you invented a crime to pay," I said. "The number being wrong doesn't make what you did legal." She stood up. She walked to the window. I recognized this move. She did it when she needed a moment to pivot. "What do you want?" she asked. Her voice was different now, quieter. "I want you to understand what happened," I said. "I want you to understand that I have spent my entire adult life watching you treat me like a budget line item for Derek's disasters, and I did not say enough about it. I said nothing when you took the college fund. I said nothing when you asked me to co-sign his lease the first time. I said nothing when you called me selfish at Christmas because I wouldn't lend him money for the bar. I kept my mouth shut because I thought silence was the cost of staying in this family. But you opened 3 fraudulent accounts in my name. You tried to refinance my home. There is no silence big enough to cover that." She turned from the window. For a moment, her face did something I did not expect. It didn't break exactly, but something in it shifted, like a plate moving beneath stone. "I did not want to lose him," she said. "He is my son." "I am your daughter," I said. "And you were willing to send me to collections to save him." She sat back down. She did not answer. I met with Derek that afternoon at a coffee shop on Diversey. He came in looking like he hadn't slept in a week, which he probably hadn't, wearing a jacket that was too thin for October, and sitting down across from me with the posture of someone waiting to be sentenced. I slid the Webb letter across the table. "This rate is criminal," I said. "He has no written agreement. The UCC lien he already filed covers the bar assets for the original $80,000. His legal exposure, if he tries to enforce this in court, is significant. My attorney is preparing a letter to his attorney today, outlining the applicable usury statutes and the potential for a countercomplaint. My prediction is that Webb will negotiate, because he cannot afford a judge looking at how he does business." Derek stared at the letter. Then he looked up at me. "How did you?" "It is my job, Derek. Why are you helping me?" I thought about that for a moment. "I am not helping you because you deserve it right now," I said. "I am helping you because Mom committed fraud in my name to solve a problem that may not have needed solving the way she solved it. And the fastest way to clean up the actual mess is to address the actual debt. But I want you to understand something." I waited until he was looking at me. "I am not your backup plan. I am not the account Mom gets to tap when your life needs reorganizing. When this is over, you and I are going to have a different kind of relationship than the one we have had, or we are not going to have one at all." That is not a threat. It is just the truth. He nodded slowly. He looked like someone who had been told the same comfortable lies for so long that an honest sentence required a moment to process. What happens to Mom? He asked. That depends on what she does next, I said. Patrice's letter to Webb's attorney went out the following morning. It was 4 pages. It cited 3 Illinois statutes. It attached a copy of the UCC lien and noted that Webb's legal claim was already perfected against the bar's assets and did not require further action against Derek personally. It also noted that the interest rate Webb had asserted in his demand letter constituted criminal usury under Illinois law, and that any attempt to collect the inflated amount would be met with a countercomplaint and a referral to the Stockses. Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. Webb's attorney called Patrice within 48 hours. The negotiated settlement was $92,000, payable over 18 months, secured against a parcel of land Derek owned jointly with my father. No threats. No visits to Derek's apartment. No missing fingers or broken anything. Just a number that reflected the actual legal reality of the debt, paid on a schedule that Derek, for the first time in his adult life, was going to have to meet himself. The criminal side took longer. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office opened an investigation. The notary, Cynthia Park, cooperated completely. She confirmed that my mother had told her I had given verbal authorization and that she had not verified my identity in person. She surrendered her notarial journal, and her license was suspended pending review. My mother was charged with identity theft, financial institution fraud, and forgery. My father was not charged. He had known about the condo and had not stopped it, but knowledge without action occupied a complicated legal space, and Patrice believed the state's attorney would not pursue him if he agreed to cooperate with the investigation, which he did. My mother's attorney negotiated a plea. She avoided prison. She was placed on 2 years of supervised probation, required to complete financial counseling, and ordered to pay restitution for the legal and credit remediation costs I had incurred. The fraudulent accounts were removed from my credit report. My condo remained mine with its original mortgage balance. The refinance closing never happened. I did not go to the plea hearing. I was in Street Louis that day, consulting on a case involving a nonprofit whose executive director had been skimming donation funds for 4 years. I sat in a conference room with a stack of bank records and a legal pad, and I did the work I was trained to do, following the numbers, until they told a story that could not be argued with. That evening, I called my father. "It's done," he said. "I know, Rachel." He paused. "I am sorry. I should have stopped her. I should have called you. I have been letting things happen for a long time and telling myself it wasn't my fault, because I wasn't the one doing them." It was the most honest thing he had said to me in years, possibly ever. "I know, Dad. Do you think?" He stopped. "Is there anything left here? Between us?" I looked out the hotel window at the Street Louis skyline, the arch catching the last of the evening light. "There might be," I said. "But it has to be different. You don't get to be passive anymore. That's the deal." He agreed. We talked for a while, not about the case or the charges or the restitution, about other things. About my grandmother, whose savings I had used as part of my condo down payment, who had told me once that money was just stored work and that no one had the right to take stored work from someone who had earned it. About whether he was eating well. About small things. The way people talk when they are trying to rebuild something that got damaged and are not sure yet how much is salvageable. I did not call my mother. 3 weeks after the plea hearing, I came home on a Friday evening to my condo on North Paulina Street. I changed out of my work clothes and poured a glass of wine and stood in my kitchen looking at the walls I had painted myself, the bookshelves I had assembled on a Sunday afternoon 3 years ago with a YouTube tutorial and a glass of bad Merlot, the framed print above the couch that I had found at a street market and which meant nothing to anyone else and everything to me. The condo was small. It was mine in every specific sense of that word. I had earned each square foot of it. I had protected it. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. It was brief, and it was not an apology exactly, but it was honest, which was something I had not gotten from him in a long time. First payment went through. On time, I set up autopay. Thank you for the web thing. I know you didn't have to. I set the phone down and looked out the window at the neighborhood I had chosen, the street I had walked 100 times, the coffee shop on the corner where I knew the barista's name and she knew my order. There were people who would look at what had happened and call it a tragedy. A mother charged with a crime, a family fractured, a daughter who had not spoken to her mother in months and might not for years. But I was a forensic accountant. I knew what it meant when the numbers told the truth. And the truth was that the structure had looked solid from the outside for a long time, but the rot had been spreading through the load-bearing parts for years. What happened was not a collapse. It was a reckoning. And reckonings, when they come honestly and completely, are not the end of something. They are the first day of an accurate ledger. I finished my wine. I locked my door. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I slept through the night without waiting for the phone to ring.